Hey everybody, this is George K with Lead Like a Boss, and man, I've got another great guest for you today. Someone who's got decades of experience helping businesses to not just manage their real estate, but also to expand, grow, change, move. And we're going to get into that, and we're going to get into some of his passions. Ron, thank you for being on the podcast.
George, pleasure. I'm happy to be here.
So Ron, let's start with the business. Sure. Let's start with Ron Wiebe Realties.
Absolutely.
When did you start?
So 21 years ago, I'm not sure the date, 2002.
What time was it? No, I'm just kidding.
Exactly. 2004. Basically, I had moved here from Winnipeg for business purposes. The businesses that we originally came to Montreal for had finished. And so I was looking for what we call a second career.
Okay.
And Ron Wiebe Realties was born from that. And I must say, it's commercial real estate, not residential.
Right. Did I say residential?
I don't know if you did or not.
Okay. So you've seen a lot in the commercial real estate space over 20 plus years. What do you think's changed in the real estate world? You know, I mean, especially post-COVID. I mean, my goodness.
For sure. So the COVID situation, and we'll just zoom in on that, really affected seriously two aspects of commercial real estate, because I'm involved with industrial spaces as well as office spaces. So the office space, Centreville, downtown Montreal, was just decimated. Everybody was left Dodge, went home because they couldn't get together because of COVID.
Or to the suburbs, or the small towns.
The burbs, exactly. Stayed home, operated from their homes, that type of thing. And still a lot of that going on today. And then the other aspect, what happened was there was a shortage of industrial space because COVID had messed up the logistics.
Oh, yeah.
And so a lot of people were saying, I need additional space so that, because they couldn't do the just on time anymore. So they said, well, instead of ordering a container that's going to arrive on time every 2 weeks, let's order 5 containers, but we need a bigger warehouse to keep it.
My goodness.
And then the container...
Never even thought about that.
Right. And the container costs then shot up in price. And so a lot of my clients, the tenants, were saying, Ron, the goods that are inside those containers are actually worth less than the cost of the shipping the container.
Unbelievable.
So they said, well, you know what? Then we can afford to manufacture that here or assemble it here. So we need more warehouse space.
You know, when you say that, I think of Obama's administration. You know, he started the reshoring movement. I mean, everybody thinks it was Trump, but it was actually Obama that started the whole reshoring movement. I think COVID did more for reshoring than Trump and Obama together.
Yeah, it's amazing. So what happened, of course, it's supply and demand. So just like the containers, there was a big demand, the prices shot up. This very same thing happened to industrial space. So whereas the tenants' net rent were at $6 a square foot, shot up to $16 a square foot. And so, of course, a lot of people, when their leases came due, they just couldn't afford the rent, and they had to pack it in. And now, your competitors, if you think about it, they also have to spend that kind of money. But what that does, of course, is it inflation.
Yeah, of course, obviously.
There you go.
My goodness.
That's where we are today. So.
Yeah, and I just don't see any light at the end of the tunnel. I don't see it changing very much in the near future anyways.
Yeah, I honestly don't either. So the only thing is that the wages have to catch up to the cost of goods, right?
Yeah, it seems like a circle. You know, you think about the 40s and 50s. You know, you had people working in manufacturing jobs that could afford a house, 2 cars. Their wife didn't need to go to work. You know, they could raise a couple of kids, and then we shipped all those jobs overseas, and now it seems like the pendulum's swinging back.
Yeah, for sure.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I'm not an economist by any stretch of the imagination, but I have been in the commercial real estate business long enough that I recognize when things start to get quiet in my end of the business, I feel like maybe I'm the proverbial canary in the mine shaft. If it gets slow, that means people aren't hiring. They don't need the space. And then I can start to see that there's going to be layoffs and that type of thing happening. And so But it's the peaks and valleys. It's
Yeah.
a normal kind of thing that happens in any economy.
Yeah, and people need to just adjust. People need to change. I mean, I don't know how many times, I don't know how many conversations I've had with people at this table, where something that seems like a disadvantage here is an advantage somewhere else.
Yes.
You've got a lot of people now who are not looking for jobs necessarily locally. They can look for jobs internationally now.
Absolutely. Yeah. Don't have to leave home, right? You can still be working out of the Vancouver area, but still situated in your home here in Montreal.
Yeah, you can go where the need is. You can go where the customers are. Yeah, absolutely. I get that. So Ron, how big is your team?
So actually, our team is very small, always has been. I've had this wonderful woman, Beatrice Azoulay. She's worked with me for 17 years. I've been saying.
Talk
for the
about job
longest time.
security.
Yeah, well, it's not a job. She's an amazing person, very hard worker, and so I say work with, because she doesn't work for me, right? She's an independent broker and that type of thing, but we get along famous. And I guess she's like my second wife. And I'm starting to get a little long in the tooth, and I've just recently brought on a young guy, and I'm just showing him the ropes and hoping that he's going to take more of my workload. So it's exciting. It's exciting. But we've always been a small team. And then we've got a couple of part-time administrators for the paperwork, we'll say.
So Ron, I know you're a consummate entrepreneur, and when you see a problem, you're not one to shy away from it. You're not one to push it aside. Talk to us about how Ron Wiebe Realties evolved, and now we have Investiprise as being part of the puzzle.
Right. So as I said, we've been around about 21 years. So about 11 years ago now, I kept getting people calling me saying, Ron, you did a great job finding space for our business, but you know what? My parents are retirement age. They want to sell their grocery store. And I'd be like, I'm sorry, I can't help you, because that is a totally separate entity into itself. Like, there's a lot of moving parts to sell a business. One is, how do you value the business?
Yeah.
So I'd be saying no, but it kept happening over and over, different people approaching me. So I said, you know what, maybe we're leaving some money on the table. Maybe there's something we're missing. And they are closely related in terms of space, commercial.
There's definitely overlap.
Dealing with businesses and business challenges and that type of thing. So we looked into it. One of the organizations that I was led to by a friend is the IBBA. Mm-hmm. It's the International Business Brokers Association. Their big sister is the M&A Source. And basically they're their M&A being mergers and acquisitions. They had all kinds of fantastic courses and credited license, we'll say, to that you could receive. So I was introduced to that. I went to my first conference. Everybody's amazing. And so I spent a lot of money, spent a lot of time in the new seat learning the ropes. And since then, we've brought in a couple of other amazing guys that are working on the Investiprise team. So we have the Ron Wiebe Realties team, we have the Investiprise team. They don't overlap, but they do in some respects. In fact, presently we're securing a lease for a business that was just sold.
Wow.
So again,
yeah.
So
there's crossover for sure.
Absolutely.
For sure. They're complementary. It's now going back to what we were just talking about, COVID. I mean, it sounds like maybe COVID is affecting some of the commercial real estate, but I would imagine the M&A world must be like kind of on fire.
As everybody knows, we've got a lot more baby boomers than we do any other segment of the population, and those people, just like somebody that's working for the government at the bank, at one point or another, they want to retire. Mm-hmm. And so it's there's lots of opportunities out there. Some people, of course, some of the younger people may not want their father's or mother's business.
I'm sure it's a minority that do, no?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right? So, and some of those younger people, they're not entrepreneurs whatsoever. In fact, their parents worked extremely hard in their business
to get them out of it,
to get them to be the lawyers and the doctors.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah,
that they
don't do like I did. Don't work hard like I did.
So they don't have to work, 50, 60 hours, right? And I'm not saying that they don't, but that was the thought process behind it.
I mean, look, my dad's an entrepreneur, as you know. My grandfather's an entrepreneur. And it is a special breed for sure. But I think certainly, the baby boomers and just before that, the odds were really stacked against them. I mean, yeah, they worked out well, but in the early days when they were starting out, I mean, it was pretty horrendous for most of them in terms of what they had to go through.
Absolutely. And I don't think it's any different today for the immigrant population in any, not just Quebec, but in anywhere.
Anywhere.
And many of the immigrants that are coming in, they're the buyers of these businesses.
Yeah, they can't get work. They need to buy their own businesses.
Right. Yeah, and especially if the unemployment is at an all-time, we'll say, low, where people aren't doing a lot of hiring, government's not doing a lot of hiring. Absolutely, this is a great opportunity for people to come in, buy an established business. From the day they sit down, the phone will ring, people will walk in the door, there's business to be done.
Yeah, you're starting with a head start.
Right. And quite often we see this. There's almost always an uptick of could be like even 25%, because the day that you sit in the new seat, of course, you're all gung-ho.
You got new energy.
And I've been running the business for the last 30, 40 years. I'm tired. And it's like, yeah, I know I should have done this and I could do that to improve business, but I'm tired, right? And so
tired / satisfied.
Yeah.
You've reached a certain level and you're comfortable and your lifestyle is kind of adjusted, and that's it.
Yeah, for sure.
What are some of, I know buying a business is something. Selling a business is something completely different.
Absolutely.
What are the pitfalls that you see? What are the typical things that you see that business owners that want to sell their businesses, what do you typically see that they bump up against?
Good question. So one, the vast majority, I'm going to say even as high as 99% of people have no idea what their business is worth. They've heard all kinds of stories, all kinds of rumors. Oh, it could be like this or what. You need to have a proper evaluation done. So that's the first step in knowing what is your business worth and how can you retire, because that's usually part of your retirement package. Now, even if it isn't part of your retirement package, you just want to change careers, change jobs, or perhaps you and I are partners and we decided we don't want to be partners for whatever reason. Perhaps we're getting a divorce.
It's your aftershave, brother. I'm sorry.
Exactly. You need an evaluation. You need to know what is that business worth. So that's number one. Two, quite often when we do the evaluation of what is the business worth, of course, we've got 100 different questions that we ask. Then we discover there are many things that you're doing that you could change and make improvements to your business that would make your business worth more. And sometimes because you've been doing your business the way you've been doing it successfully over the years, you don't recognize that there's some changes that could be made. So quite often, the people that are planning on selling come to us, I'll say, too late. They're already sick. They're already...
The divorce is in progress,
Exactly,
the whatever. Yeah.
Exactly. So rather than coming 2 years prior to thinking about retiring, come get an evaluation, say, okay, now I know what my business is worth. I can talk to my financial planner. I can make better plans. At the same time, are there some things, some housekeeping that needs to be done to my business so that when the banks look at it for financing purposes or when the buyer looks at it for financing purposes, all of these cobwebs have been cleaned up and things have been taken care of. Maybe you need to put a manager in place. Maybe you need to take your wife's name off of the books because she doesn't really work there, but for tax purposes, it makes sense, and so on. There's lots of moving parts.
You know, as a business consultant, as a business coach, you know, the thing that we often see is people who have basically purchased a job and they call it a business, right?
Yes,
I call these people self-employed versus entrepreneurs.
Yes.
They know their thing. They know what they do really well.
Exactly.
Baker, butcher, candlestick maker, whatever the heck it is.
Yep.
But they don't understand business. Like they don't understand finance, they don't understand marketing, they don't understand HR, they don't understand, macro or microeconomics.
Correct.
All of that kind of stuff. As a broker, you've seen many transactions. I want you to help give the audience a sense of how much getting that stuff done well, like at least getting it under control, how much that can affect the bottom line when it comes time to sell. Forget your operational profits now, but like the bottom line when it comes time to sell.
It's huge. It's huge. I mean, it might even make the difference between somebody wanting to buy your business versus not buy your business.
Wow.
I mean, if they look at two different businesses and this person has a manager in place, this person has SOPs in place, if this person has
a marketing plan,
right? If they can say, oh, we have a manual for that, right? Versus the person, identical business, identical profits, let's say, and all of the numbers, all of the passwords, everything is up in this person's head. If that person got hit by a bus and in the hospital tomorrow, where is the key to open the door to go to work?
Wow.
Right? I'm
sure you've seen it all, right?
Yeah. We from one end of the scale to the other. Yeah. And so it doesn't kind of surprise you. Although sometimes you're looking at a business and the bottom line, it looks amazing.
Yeah.
But when you start to brush away the dust and oh my gosh, how did they do this? Like they're working way too hard to generate these kind of numbers.
Yeah.
Right. So,
and I think the other thing that a lot of business owners don't appreciate because, it's just not their thing. I mean, they're not trained to do this. They don't understand how little changes in different parts of the equation. So marketing, operations, sales, the little tweaks in the different categories has a massive effect on the bottom line.
Of course. Yep. And one change in one area can make improvements in the other areas of the business. But again, a lot of the entrepreneurs, they're busy running their business, right? And I think we've all heard the story about the guy that stops to sharpen his axe or his saw, right? And he can do the same amount of work, but he works much physically less demanding.
It's more efficient, yeah.
More efficient because he's taken time to sharpen his saw, right? So we find that with a lot of entrepreneurs where, and we see it in the process too, when they've asked us to help them sell their business and then we require information and they say, yeah, I'll get that to you. And then we have to keep reminding them, please, we need that information.
What is a P&L anyways?
we can't advance it. The other challenge is sometimes, you started a business from zero and you had an accountant at that time who was good for the business at that time, maybe the first few years of your business. But as you've successfully grown your business, you've kept the same accountant.
Oh, boy.
And sometimes that accountant is not the most efficient person. But of course, you've established a relationship.
Or just doesn't have the experience.
Exactly, right? And the same thing can happen with your legal advice from your lawyer.
Or your banker.
Your banker. And so sometimes, it's difficult maybe for the brokers, for the M&A advisors to say, you know what, maybe you need to think about a different accounting system or a different accountant. But it's very difficult. You've had that same person with you for the last 20, 30 years.
There's a trust factor for sure. One technique that I've used and I've seen used that works well is, you have your trusted advisor, your trusted accountant, and maybe that person needs relief or needs someone needs to come in and help them. You make that person the consultant. And then you give the work to a firm, and that person kind of shepherds the firm,
Absolutely.
and to make sure your interests are being managed, but you still get the benefits of working with the firm.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're selling the business, buyer, seller, they both have their own representation, legal representation, somebody for their accounting and that type of thing, and we're there to guide the process. To make sure that each party is getting the proper information and to.
I'd
just
love
make
to be a
sure.
fly on the wall in some of those meetings, man.
Could be interesting. And I must say, all of this is done confidentially.
Yeah.
Of course, it's priority number one. You don't want your competitors to know you're selling. You don't want your staff to know you're selling until the right time.
Oh yeah.
You don't want your clients to know that you're selling.
Oh yeah.
Right? You want everything to be done. There's a time, of course. All of this will happen, but you want it done in such a smooth fashion that nobody panics and nobody starts quitting their job because they think that their new boss is not going to be. Whereas the new boss might be saying, "Oh, I'm giving everybody a 10% increase in salary."
Yeah. People go to the worst right away. I mean, in general, yeah. Okay, so time. A lot of folks don't give enough time, to prepare their exit or their sale. That's one. Understanding your numbers, understanding your business. That's another one. One more tip. What's one more tip that we should that folks that are thinking about selling their business, or maybe we'll flip it. You're thinking about buying a business. Let's give a tip for someone who's thinking to buy a business. What would you recommend would be, the like, what do you see as a rookie mistake or a mistake that a lot of folks make out the gate when they're looking for a business?
So, as you can appreciate, if you were going to buy a business, chances are you should have some of your own money. Yes, let's imagine the bank is going to lend you the bulk of the money, but you probably need some of your own money.
You'd think,
right? So, one of the questions when people come to us to buy, we want to know that they're a qualified buyer. Obviously, if we're going to introduce them to a business, and again, even if we introduce, just so people understand, when we introduce a buyer to a business, we can introduce it in such a fashion in the beginning that they don't know the name of the company.
Sure.
So that
it's like a blind date,
right? They just know they just know that it's a plumbing business for sale. They know it's located somewhere on the island of Montreal, that it's been business for 20 years, that type of thing. And here are the numbers.
Right.
But we don't have to tell them the address, the name, and so on and so forth, because we want to know, is this going to be a good fit? So it's always a step-by-step process. But one of the things that some of the buyers, I feel, are always surprised about, and when we ask them, so how much money do you have? And they're like kind of taken aback, like, well, that's kind of private. Like, why do you want to know? It's because if you don't have the money, we don't need to discuss.
How do I know how do I know what kind of business to introduce you to? Like, what's your budget?
Right. So when they say, I have 100,000 liquid cash or $500,000 liquid cash or something, we say, great, but we're going to need proof of funds. And that's also, another verification because we want to give comfort to the seller.
Oh, you have a reputation to uphold.
Exactly. So when we get an answer along the money lines, say, well, I have an uncle that lives overseas. He told me that when I find the ideal business, he'll lend me the money to buy. That is the wrong answer.
I love that one. Okay, so I love it. And to me, it sounds exactly the same as when you're going to buy a property, buy a house or whatever. You got to go to a mortgage broker. You got to, set your budget. You got to make sure you're pre-approved for X amount of dollars, blah, blah, blah. And then you start looking for your house.
There you go.
I mean, it sounds kind of like the same thing.
100%.
We've seen a lot. I don't know if I've seen it in the States. I don't know if it's happening in Canada as much. Seller financing. There's kind of been a wave happening in the States, with all this kind of stuff. Yep. I mean, it sounds hairy, scary to me. What have you seen as far as that's concerned?
Right. So that's a great thing to bring up. Generally, the very best financial transaction, is exactly what you're talking about. Not complete seller financing. So a balance of sale seller financing, the banks, regardless of who they are, they love to see everybody have a bit of a skin in the game. Mm-hmm. So the buyer will come up with a reasonable down payment. The bank generally will finance the bulk of the purchase. And then the seller will leave something on the table, depending on the size of the business, the type of the business. It might be for a period of a year that's going to be paid back. Sometimes it could be a period of even 3 years. It all depends on how it's structured. It all depends on, is it an earn-out, depending on the type of business. If we're selling something like a bookkeeping business, something to that effect. So I'm buying your book. I'm buying all of your clients. But in a year's time, they might say, Ron's not as sharp as George was as a bookkeeper, right? And so I think I'm going to find another bookkeeper. So now all of a sudden the numbers have dropped off. It's not George's fault,
Nope.
right?
Nope.
So it all depends on the type of business. But ideally, if the seller leaves some skin in the game, it gives confidence to the buyer, it gives confidence to the bank that what you're selling is what you said you were selling. Right?
Yeah,
So-
no, I get it. I mean, I've bought businesses, I've sold businesses, and so was my father. And yeah, it's almost always the case where the seller, hangs out for a while.
Yep.
I mean, and it's no different than when you, in the corporate world, when a CEO exits, or the founder exits a business, he usually stays on for X amount of years for the transition.
Yep. Well, and sometimes we have that as well. I mean, normally we have the passing baton period of time where the previous or the original owner sticks around, makes sure that they're, and it depends again on the type of business. Some businesses might be as simple as 2 weeks. It was a franchise.
Yeah.
Right? You've already had to go to the franchise school, learn how to prepare.
You hand over the SOPs, introduce them to the
Yep,
team.
Exactly. 2 weeks. Yep. Everything's under control. Thanks. Goodbye.
Yeah.
And other times it might be a 2-3 year process, depending on how sophisticated the business is, and other elements to the sale of the business.
Yeah, I've seen businesses that are highly contract oriented, and contracts come up annually, and the founder has to stay with the new owner until those contracts are renewed to make sure those renewals happen smoothly.
100%.
Otherwise, it could endanger the success of the new business.
100%.
Yeah, I get that. It changes from business to business. All right, Ron, one of the things that I brought you on the podcast to talk about is not just the business, and you just folks, just so you know, Ron is a friend of mine, but he's also a very, very successful businessman. If he can't help you, he knows somebody who can. So I'm just saying you should check him out. I'm giving you your props because it's for real.
Thanks. You're too nice.
We want to talk about some topics that are near and dear to your heart.
Super.
And there's one that's near and dear to my heart as well. And we'll start with that. Sun Youth. I know that you are involved with the Sun Youth organization. Talk to us a little bit about how you got involved with the Sun Youth organization.
Yeah, that's an interesting story. I think it's interesting. So again, I had moved here from Montreal, and maybe people that have always lived in Montreal always knew about Sun Youth, and they do good things and that type.
Yeah, Sid Stevens is
exactly.
He's a feature. He's like a saint of Montreal.
Indeed. So someone I knew had asked me, Ron, can you come take a look at a building that we're recently purchasing? It was for warehousing, for all of the food donations, clothing donations that they receive. Plus, they wanted to establish an emergency office place in the event of a major emergency.
Wow.
That the police, the fire department, all of the social services could gather there.
Wow.
To help people in need, because that's what they do.
Yeah.
So I said, sure, but the building was far too big for all of the requirements they needed. Ron, what could we do? Being a commercial broker, give us some ideas what we could do. So I put together a proposal, and being, of course, a self-employed person, I got to get paid, right? my kids like to eat every day. I don't know why. So I put together a proposal, told them, this is what I recommend. This is what I would charge you. But I really had no good understanding of who Sun Youth was, or did.
Mm-hmm. They were just a business name for you at that point.
So they said, great, bring the proposal. The board will all meet together and we'll discuss this. So I got there early. Who shows up? But the co-founder, Earl de la Perel, showed up. And I first, and we were talking, so what's Sun Youth all about? And he started telling me all these fantastic, incredible stories. And I was like so humbled. I said, so when the board all met, I went over everything. I said, this is my recommendation. This is what I believe you should do. And I'll do all of this for you, and I'll rent out all of the spaces. And a little bit of bragging here. I said I'd do it for free as my contribution
Wow.
to Sun Youth. And I've been doing it ever since. And so I don't know, that's got to be, I can't, I have no idea on the time. I'm going to say
I know you
at
don't,
least 10 years.
I know you're not good at blowing your own horn, so we're not going to ask you to do that. Okay, I got to ask this question. Was it worth it?
Oh, absolutely. No, I get great joy. I still, renew the leases of the tenants that are there. There's about 5 or 6 people. And I was since invited to join the board. So I've been on the board now for a while. And Sun Youth has built a brand new building. It's going to be amazing. On Thursday, I'm going to a Secaset there. There's going to be the new gym, the new building. And if anybody that's ever been in, and you were involved at Sun Youth as a youth, right?
Oh, yeah. Sid kicked me out of his places several times when I was a snotty-nosed brat running around downtown. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Sure. So it's an amazing building. We've had so much help. The Saputos have been great contributors. Jean Coutu, the drugstore people, fantastic family. I'm leaving out a bunch of people, but there have been so many people. We still need a ton of money to pay the building, but honestly, if everybody really understood what Sun Youth does for this city, for the less fortunate people that have fallen on hard times. The city, there isn't a government agency that can operate as efficiently as Sun Youth. Anybody that gives a single donation to Sun Youth, I have to put this plug, I'm telling you, you don't know how far they can stretch your dollar.
Yeah.
There is not a wasted penny
Yeah.
at Sun Youth. And in fact, at our board meetings, this is often a topic of discussion. Well, if we do that, are we really doing justice to our donors?
Mm-hmm.
Like this is a constant.
I've had lots of people at this table and on my online guests as well. When we talk about culture, we talk about how culture is so important in an organization. And I know a lot of the people that work in the Sun Youth organization are people that benefited from the Sun Youth organization. Absolutely. I mean, a lot of people who came to this country, with not a pot to pee in, if you know what I mean. Yep. And they got help, right? They got thrown out by their landlords, et cetera, and they go to work for Sun Youth.
Absolutely.
You can't buy that kind of loyalty.
No.
In terms of like they live and breathe the ethos of Sun Youth.
100%. There isn't a person that's employed by Sun Youth who is there for the money. There's not one person that's there for the salary.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, obviously you got to get paid, but there isn't a person there that's just because it's a job.
Yeah, most of them want to give back.
Oh, 100%.
And most of them would rather get paid less working for Sun Youth than working for somebody else.
I believe
doing
this.
the same job.
I believe this.
No, this is for sure in my mind. Yeah. So the new building.
Yep, it's exciting.
Yeah. So what new services? What is it going to bring to the community? I'll give you a chance to plug it a little bit.
Absolutely. So it's on the corner of Fayon and Saint Laurent Boulevard. It's right across the street from Park Jerry. If anybody knows where you go to the I think it's the Rogers Cup. You go down, that's Gary Carter. They named that street, right? So Gary Carter is on the other side is Fayon. So it looks into Park Jerry. Fantastic building. It's carbon neutral. It is a gorgeous building.
Is that the one that has all that wood structural
100%, 100%.
I love that building.
All of that wood comes from Quebec.
I love that building.
It's all like it's got thermal heating. Like they drilled a deep well, so like you can heat the place with a match, basically.
Great building.
It's got a fantastic gym.
It's right near Metro Station?
Right near the Metro Station. It's close by where the people that need help can get there.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest things about Sun Youth is any of the additional rooms that have been built for multi-purpose rooms and that type of thing, we want other organizations, because there's a lot of nonprofits in the city that do things, because Sun Youth, it's 2 main pillars. One is the youth, hence Sun Youth, and the other is the emergency food.
Right.
So the idea of the founders when they were teens, young teens, I might say, was if kids had organized sports, it would keep them out of trouble, keep them out of jail.
Yep.
Which it's been very successful at doing. What happened was how the emergency food bank came up across. It's not a food bank, it's an emergency food bank, although some people are using it for months at a time because of hard times. So the kids that started with Sun Youth as their organized sports, if you don't show up for practice, you can't play. So the coach would say, "Where is little Johnny?" And his friends would say, "Little Johnny's dad left and he's out trying to get a job, hustle food. They have no food in the fridge." So the founders, Earl and Sid, would say, well, "This is crazy. Let's go around, collect food for the mom, right? So Johnny can play ball, the mom has food, et cetera, et cetera." And hence became the two pillars. Even though they do a ton of other things, these are the two main pillars of Sun Youth. So getting back to my long story about other organizations, we welcome other organizations to come in, use the space. We'll make some sort of arrangements so that the neighborhood, Montreal in general, can benefit.
Yeah, you help facilitate these things.
100%.
Yeah,
100%. Like it could be somebody that's giving tutoring, somebody that's teaching kids how to do computer coding, a raft of other services.
I don't want to get political, because, this isn't a political show. But you said something that was really, I think we need to put a kind of shine that penny a little bit, in the sense that political organizations, we know that entrepreneurs, we know that business, especially small business, we can run circles around these bureaucratic organizations. Yes, they may have the power and they may have like massive amounts of resources to deploy. But when it comes to speed, when it comes to being able to recognize a problem and then do something about it, in a very short period of time, nothing beats, small business. And, there are a lot of big organizations in Montreal. I mean, you've got the Moisson Montréal, you've got, Centraide, you've got all, a lot of these, large organizations. What makes Sun Youth different? I mean, they've been around. Like I said, I mean, they were kicking me out of gyms when I was a little kid. I mean, they've been serving this community.
70 years.
Yeah, I mean, you go back, you think about all the different crises that we've had in Montreal over the years. You think of the ice storm. You think of all the big fires that have affected a lot of these families. That they had nowhere to turn, and Sun Youth would house these people, would feed these people, would clothe these people, would get them furniture. I mean, they did all kinds of things.
Absolutely.
For folks, and forget about all the services that they give to the youth. I mean, keeping them out of trouble and whatnot. I mean, what is Sun Youth's secret, in the sense of I want the listeners to get a sense of how important an organization like Sun Youth is for the community, because I want them to understand it's just not a hanger on, if you know what I mean. They're just not I think they need to understand that.
So Sid, you mentioned Sid. Sid was one of those people that if he saw a need, it was like, okay, what do we do? How can we help? How really? And in the beginning, the founders, they had jobs, right? Like this was an organization, but they had jobs.
Yeah, this is their part-time thing.
They had right? Yeah. And in order to pay the staff, often there wasn't enough money coming in through donations. They would take money out of their own salaried pockets to pay the employees.
Like we've never heard an entrepreneur do that before. Never.
Right. But it wasn't like it's a business, right? And some of the fantastic stories that I've heard that are just amazing. Today we don't think anything of it. Like hydro, they cannot shut my power off. If I don't pay them now from now until spring, they can't shut my power off because it's winter.
Yeah.
But it was Sun Youth, it was Sid
and
Earl.
I remember.
Who went and said, this is not humane.
I remember.
Like these people can't put two pennies together and you want to cut off their power? How inhumane is that? they were instrumental in having that law passed.
Yeah. And I think I thought you were going to say it was like when Sid and his team see a problem, they don't go rushing for which form do we need to fill out, to apply, to send to wherever, right? They just get it done and work on the details later.
Yeah. Yes.
And I think that's the thing. I mean, I'm not trying to poo-poo these other organizations because I know that they fill a larger
of course
need. You know, they
absolutely.
They have a place, but you talk about tactical, like on the ground help. All of these organizations now know that.
Yes.
I mean, they know that you need people, boots on the ground, close to where the problem is to deal with these things. Otherwise, they become bigger fires.
Yeah.
We need these little organizations, well, relatively little organizations, close to deal with these problems before they get crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially like, things like, drugs, youth drugs, violence at home, conjugal violence. I mean, I know Sid and his team has done amazing work to help people in need as far as that's concerned.
100%.
It's really unbelievable. Ron, I really appreciate you bringing that to this table because I think people really need to understand the good these organizations do. And I think some people get this idea that, Sun Youth's been around for so long, they've got tons of money, they don't need my help. But they just constantly do more and more and more and more.
Yeah. And one of the things, like Christmas, this time of year, the holiday season, this is, of course, when everybody's inundated with, mail, can you help? And they're all worthwhile organizations generally that are asking for our money. But, people need to eat every day of the year. People need help every day of the year.
Some of us less than others, but I know what you mean.
Exactly. So I would encourage anybody, if you, of course, Sun Youth is near and dear to my heart, but I would encourage anybody, think about just a small donation on a regular basis, rather than just one time a year.
Yeah.
Even if, I don't know what everybody's budget is, but just do it monthly, right? So there's a constant, and it really helps any organization being able to budget then and say, we've got X dollars coming in, we can comfortably budget and know that we can help this many people. Right?
And every amount helps. I mean, when you said that, I think about, when Obama was running for office the first time, and he was, talking about how, folks were sending in donations of like $5 and things like that to help his campaign. And he had donors that were putting in $5 million. I get that. But every bit helps.
100%. And
I think people need to realize that every little bit helps.
100%. If you say, where's my $5 going to go? Where's my $10? How much, why bother? But if 100 people said, I only have $10, right? There's $1,000.
Yeah, it makes a difference. Yeah. So we are going to put the link in the show notes. So if folks are looking to donate and to get involved, there's going to be a link in the show notes to Sun Youth so that people can get involved.
Thank you.
And again, whether it's $5, $50, $500,000, it all helps, and it all goes to the right place.
Yes, and if it's 500,000, I will come and pick it up personally.
I bet you will. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is Hema-Québec. I know Hema-Québec is also an important cause that you believe in.
I do.
How did that happen?
You have those moments in your life. So we all have driven past, and you see, Hema-Québec or the Canadian Red Cross collecting
blood drive,
right? blood drive. You drive by, or you're in the shopping center and you see them there, right? So I had been saying to myself for years, one day near my home, I'm driving back, I'm going home, I'm in the far lane, and I see at my local fire hall police station, blood drive. And I said to myself, Ron, you're always saying. And I cut two people off and pulled into the parking lot. I went in there. I had no idea how this works, how long it's going to take. They were so nice, the volunteers. Everybody was great. It was simple. And I thought, that's it? That's all it takes to give blood? So I said, well, how often can I give? And they said, when you're giving whole blood, it's every 56 days. So once every 2 months. So near my office, it used to be, you can't anymore. It still is the head office of Hema-Québec. But they used to have a clinic there that you could give, right?
Just walk in.
Walk in, right? I'd show up every 2 months. So one day, one of the nurses saw me and said, I see you coming in here on a regular basis. How would you like to give platelets? And I said, what's platelets? And they said, oh, it's a blood product. And
I thought it was a small plate.
And so they use, exactly, they use a machine, just like, say, like a dialysis machine. It has 2 lines. One needle goes in your arm. It draws out all of your red blood. And the machine centrifugal...
Puts it in a centrifuge.
Centrifuge, thank you. And it gives you back your red blood, but it's pulled out the platelets. So when people are having treatment, cancer treatment, that type of thing, it kills those platelets, and you need them to prevent you getting sick or
infections.
Infections.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, I'll give it a try. It's a longer process, but, and I know this sounds crazy, but you can give every 2 weeks as opposed to once every 2 months.
Wow.
So I said,
because they give you back the rest of the blood.
Exactly.
They take the platelets out, but they give you the rest back.
So then they said, we also have the ability to take not only 1 donation of platelets, but we can take 2 donations of platelets, and we can take 1 donation of plasma all at the same time.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, right?
So you go to the car, you go to the gas station, you get gassed up, you get a car wash, you get a wax, you get the whole thing.
The whole thing.
Oil change, the whole
shot.
Yeah,
one
yeah,
shot.
yeah.
So I said, okay, sure, no problem. We'll try it, see how it works, right? And so I just, and the way it used to work, and things have changed since then, you have to make an appointment for that. Like, they need to be prepared that you're coming.
Sounds like something, yeah.
So I would finish my appointment. I would walk to the desk at HEMA and say, can I use your phone? Because they didn't take the appointments there.
Oh.
It was a center,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I would call, say, hi, this is me. This is my number. I want to make another appointment for 2 weeks from today. They'd say, okay, no problem. Then one day they called me and they said, we have a system. we can just book you in, right? So I know now.
You have a reoccurring appointment.
Every second Monday at 7:15 a.m. I have an appointment with my nurse at Hema-Québec.
Wow.
And now I just call if I can't because you're sick. Obviously, if you had COVID, you can't.
Hold on. If you had COVID, you can't, period? Or just for a while?
10 days later, you can, right? Or if you traveled, and there are certain countries that you travel to, they want to know.
Right.
So just so anybody that listens to this knows, they are extremely cautious about taking everybody's blood.
Yeah. Yeah.
Extremely.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
So if I can just go on for a little bit here. When I walk in the door, because they see me all the time, right? They go, oh, hi, Ron. Hi, Mr. Wiebe, depending, right? But when we start the process, it's
you're just like anybody else.
You've never seen me before. And they go through, there's a multiple questionnaire that you have to answer. They want to know, they put a bracelet on your arm with just as if you were in the hospital, so they can identify you. Every bag or tube that they use for collecting whatever has that same barcode goes on there. Everything is tested. This is like serious business. So,
yeah, I know they've learned their lesson. They like every organization, they have to learn their lessons.
Yes.
I mean, planes fall out of the sky, and there's investigations, and people change, and they improve their procedures, and I get that. I don't know much about this world, but is there a health benefit to being kind of that? How shall I put it? You go regularly. I mean, is there a?
I don't know. You know what? I don't. I've looked up, and there are some people that say, but it hasn't really been documented and that type of thing.
Okay.
And I don't do it for the health reasons. That's for sure. There is a shortage. We don't have enough of our own blood here in Quebec. So again,
what are we importing it?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, we have to bring it in, like maybe from the rest of Canada or from the United States. Ironically, in Manitoba, I think they even pay people. It seemed to me my nephew who's going.
I
to
think
the
in the
university,
States. I think in the States they pay for blood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but we still don't collect enough for our own use in Quebec. So this doesn't cost you anything but your time. The people there are super nice, whether it's the
What do you think
volunteers.
holds people back?
I think the fear of not knowing, the fear of, right? But I'm really encouraged when I'm sitting there, because for what I do, it takes about from the time I sit down, not walk in the door, from the time I walk in the door and leave, it's about 2 hours. The time that
but
I'm
you're doing the whole shebang.
yeah, by the time, but sitting there, it's about an hour, 55 an hour sitting there. But then there's a questionnaire, and of course they don't want you to just walk out the door the second that you're finished your donation. Stay, well, they don't serve donuts anymore, but they've got all kinds
bad
of
for your heart.
all kinds
Really
of good
bad
stuff,
for your heart.
juices and coffees and that type of thing. But the volunteers are super nice. The nurses are super nice. Everybody is like very, very nice.
I think people don't understand enough about what the blood is used for. I mean, I think people they think like emergencies, like they see stuff on TV, they see these horrific accidents, and they think, oh, this person's lost a lot of blood, he needs blood, but they don't realize, all the cancer patients and all the people who have hemorrhagic diseases, that constantly need blood transfusions to keep them alive.
100%. Every time there's an operation, you can imagine the number of operations that are taking place. They need to be on standby, right? Anybody that's chemotherapy and that type of thing, they need products. And then, like you said, and it could be the littlest of babies. I went for the first time to the awards ceremonies. And there was a family at the end. The woman was there with her family, and they showed pictures. It was a real tearjerker. Oh my gosh, everybody was crying. And they showed like when he was a little guy, and he had actually in and out of the hospital for years, and she was there to say thank you.
Yeah, I knew a fellow who needed a blood transfusion. I think it was every month to stay alive. He had some kind of a condition, and if he didn't have a blood transfusion, he would die. He would just die. That would be it.
Yeah. So it's really, really important. And so whether you're giving whole blood, whether you're giving platelets, whether you're giving plasma, a lot of people simply give plasma. I know a lot of people that they're in and out. It's quick, it's easy, it's painless. Then like if you could see how big the needle is, like you would be shocked at how small it is, right?
Yeah, I'm sure they've perfected the art of making it as painless as possible.
Absolutely. Now, I get it. Some people can't for whatever reason.
Right.
And
if your health is not there, it's not there.
Right. But really, it's simple. It's really very, very simple just to do. And they try to be open as many of the convenient hours. I do it because I'm still working, so I like to do it first thing in the morning. And so it's kind of like, 7 a.m. and then get out of there and I start my day.
Can companies, I seem to remember how companies can host drives, no?
Yep, for sure. So, and again, for those who are out there listening, because they won't take your blood, let me put it this way, they'll take your blood, but they won't keep your blood. So they're very good at this. So if all of us and our friends decided, hey, let's have a blood drive party and we're all going to go, right?
Right.
And one of our friends, maybe has a drug problem that nobody else is aware of, right? He can just let the nurse know that, or the way that he answers or she answers the questionnaire, they're going to be like, nope, we can't keep your blood. But they don't want to out you either.
We can take it, but we can't keep it.
Right.
Or we can't use it.
Right.
Gotcha.
And so it could be because some of the questions they ask, for instance, have you had a new sexual partner, right? Because again, contamination, right? And so again, you don't want to be outed because it just happens that your girlfriend, wife, or whatever is there as well.
Ouch.
Right? And so they're conscious of these types of things.
Right.
And so everybody can still give. And those who have been identified, plus even if they didn't identify, they're going to catch it. And
they have a screening process,
100%,
obviously.
100%.
Yeah, I understand.
It's really cool. Yeah.
I think, I mean, look, the obvious advice we always get when it comes to these things, consult your doctor. Talk to your doctor. Ask your doctor, hey, doc, is it okay for me to give blood? Is there any reason why I shouldn't give blood? And if your doc gives you the thumbs up, go for it.
And
right?
listen, they're the first ones as well. You could just show up and just say, hey, I want to talk to one of the nurses. Show me the process. Tell me what the process is like. Can I give? These are my issues. And
am I at risk? Blah, blah, blah.
They're going to be the first ones to tell you that you should, or you could, or you shouldn't.
Right.
Right? They don't want to put anybody at risk.
Yeah, probably a lot faster than getting an appointment with your doctor. I didn't say that. Did I say that out loud? Yeah, I hear you. Ron, listen, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. I mean, I wish I could just do this all day long. You're not just a great entrepreneur. I know you're very dedicated to your family. I mean, we could have spent the whole podcast time just talking about, your family and how you manage your family and you're a real father figure. But you put your money where your mouth is in terms of you do good business, but you're also interested in doing good for the community. And I think that's a big reason why I wanted you to be at this table, because the boss principles, leading like a boss is not about bossing people around, right? It's about being brave. It's about being optimistic. It's about creating a secure environment for people, not just in your business, but in your community, and doing it in such a way that it's sustainable, that it can go on and on. And you've done that in your business, helping business owners to create value in their businesses and to sell them in such a way that they can have money for their retirement. You're involved in organizations that are giving back to the community in a big way. And I think that you're a real example to people to follow. And you don't have to be a millionaire. Everybody can do it.
You don't. And some of the things, thank you, George, you're very kind. But sometimes I just say to myself, I'm so grateful that I don't need the services of Sun Youth, that I don't need the services of Hema-Québec, right? Like, if you think of it that way, but there are people that do, so.
It's interesting you say that. It made me think of Warren Buffett's comments, after he made the announcement he was giving his wealth to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And there's two things that struck me, when he made that announcement. The first was that when asked why are you giving away your money? And he said that he had no influence on where he was born, like what part of the world he was born, and 100%. When he was born.
100%.
And he said that I just was lucky enough to be born in the U.S., in an environment where if you work hard and you do the right things, that you could prosper.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a zillion places on this planet that he could have been born. And no matter how hard he worked, no matter how sharp he was, he would never have been able to amass the wealth that he was able to amass. Indeed. So he felt the need to give back because of that. Because he from a totally practical point of view, he said, like a farmer, if I don't give back to the soil, nothing else, it's going to be ruined.
There you go.
It's only a matter of time before it's over. And he loves his country, and he felt that by giving back that way, he would be preserving the future. So that was the one thing. And the other thing he said, that he spent a considerable amount of money on consultants and analysts and whatnot to say, how can I deploy my money to do the most good?
Right.
And after all the analysis was done, they said, just give it to Bill.
Nice.
His organization is just squeezing like 99 cents out of every dollar.
Love it.
And after he did that analysis, he said, okay, just you take it.
Nice.
And I hear that's what you're saying too with organizations like Sun Youth and organizations like Hema-Québec. They are dedicated to making sure that if you give, whether it's your blood or whether it's your time or your money with Sun Youth, that they are going to deploy it in such a way that it'll have maximum effect for people.
Right. Absolutely. Well, and to your point, I've used this, and I didn't originate this, but I've used this from time to time. So what are you doing with your time, talent, and treasure?
Yep.
Right.
There you go.
We all have We all have that, maybe in different portions, but we all have it in one way or another, right? So,
Yeah. And I think to close off, I think the other thing that I think folks need to understand and think about is your legacy. I mean, I don't think there's anybody, when they're on death's door that says, oh, I wish I went to another party.
Yeah.
Or I wish I bought another car.
Yeah.
Or I wish I, had another watch.
Sure.
Most people, they say, I should have done more to help people.
Yeah.
And I think I know it's kind of a somber, kind of a thought, but I think people sleep better at night when they know that they've done something to help.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it feels good, and then you feel guilty about feeling good about.
Well, let's not go there.
I know it sounds,
let's not go there. Let's stick with the feeling.
Right?
Let's stick with the feeling good about doing good. Ron, thank you so much, guys. Check out Ron Wiebe Realties.
Thanks, George.
And Hema-Québec and Sun Youth, great causes.
Absolutely.
And I look forward to having you back on this podcast.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. You're great. Thank you.